So my name's Myles Bond, I'm from South Australia, and this is a historic sports sedan. It's a Datsun Stanza coupe, which we didn't have here in Australia back in the 80s. This is built in 1980, originally raced and owned by Barry Bray. Barry got hold of this shell brand new, and they built it as a sports sedan from brand new. So it's been a race car its entire life. As far as the engine goes, it's got a Nissan Motorsport LZ20, so it's a 2-litre 16-valve turbo, which came over from Nissan. I think there were 5 of them to Gibson Motorsport, and Barry got his hands on one. It's a special engine, this one. It's a really nice one, and the motor feeds back to a Hewland transaxle, so gearbox and transmission all in the back. Yeah, really cool machine, this one. So to drive this, it's good. It is really good, especially considering it was built way back in the early 80s and originally raced back in the 80s and 90s. It's still, I would say, it's still capable of being a competitive car even in a current national sports sedan field. It's mid-mount, clearly, as you'd see from the images, that the engine's forward of the firewall, or rearward of the firewall, we'll say. So the balance of the car is fantastic, and obviously having a transaxle in there as well helps to really get a nice balance. Total car weight's around the 800 kilos, and at full boost it'd put out about 550 horsepower. So on paper, power to weight, and also just the design from when it was originally built is still really good. Very basic, but it makes good speed for sure. Barry ran this car for many years, Barry Bray, and then he went on to other cars. He had Nexa, he had a S12 Gazelle, which he's got here this weekend as well. It went to another owner. It got put back to a 2-litre car, no turbo, raced for a while, and I think was chucked away in a shed. And then Simon Fitzner from PPG got his hands on it. It was nostalgic to him because his father and Barry, who's part of a friendship group, all had a lot to do with this car. So he got his hands on it again, and he and Barry have rebuilt it back to its original specs, effectively. And then I've got a relationship with Simon through historic cars and sports sedans in general, and yeah, just lucky enough that he's offered to give me a drive of this one. And yeah, we're not trying to set the world on fire. We're just out here to push it a little bit, put on a bit of a show for the fans, and keep its wheels moving rather than let it rot away in a shed. Yeah, the engine, it's when I drive it slow, which is weird, but when I drive it slow, it's probably actually a little bit harder to control. Once it's up to speed and it's making grip and I'm pushing it harder, there's no lag. The engine works really well. The turbo's not massive, so it's got a really nice rev range. It's a little bit twitchy, but it's not super wide like some of the modern sports sedans are very square. This one's still got quite a nice wheelbase versus its track, so it'll slide around a little bit, but you can definitely hang on to it. It's very, very nice on the nose, so it turns in extremely well, which I really like. So you can be extremely direct with the car, and the rear end will want to keep going, but as long as you're onto it, you can catch that. Yeah, and it's got enough grunt to just sort of slide it through the corners and power slide out without it being an absolute menace. You can control it really well. So not a huge slick. It's actually quite a small tyre compared to a modern sports sedan, but because of the weight and the size of it, it works really well. I've driven this at Malala previously. That was the first time I drove it at the last historic meeting, and then after that went really well. Simon offered for me to come here to Winton and have another steer. So this car hasn't run here at Winton for I think close to 20 years. Yeah, so and Barry did a lot of racing here. So predominantly Sandown and Phillip Island, but he did a lot of races here at Winton, so it's really nice to have it back. And we've already had a lot of comments on people saying that they used to see it here, or they used to fit the tyres to the car back in the day. So yeah, that's the beauty of the historics, just bringing the old girls back out. I think this size car is definitely suited to a small track. Absolutely, I think it's it doesn't really need to stretch its legs. It's nice and nimble and it's quick, and because it's got that really pointy front end, it suits a track like Winton well. It was really nice at Malala. I was quite impressed with it the first time I drove it. I think it'd still be okay around a track like Phillip Island or Eastern Creek, but I think potentially it was set up around Sandown predominantly, and as it did a lot of racing here, it's probably slowly been developed to suit the smaller, tighter track. So yeah, it's I I think, yeah, like I said, in the modern competition, it would still be right in the mix, probably even top 5 if you wound it up and threw some new tyres on it, for sure. The cars, I would say almost, the car's quite basic. I mean, that's probably just how they were built back in the 80s. It's not, I wouldn't say over-engineered, but, you know, we're not talking huge flat floors, and there's not massive diffusers hanging out the back, and, you know, there's barely no electronics at all, just really to start the car. Mechanical injection inside. So it's quite a simple car, so there's probably nothing specific that is super funky about it, but that as a whole is probably what's so funky about it, that it is quite basic, you know, but it works really well. So obviously it's just the design of the chassis and the fact that they've managed to get that sort of power and usable power into a light car, and not overdo it, you know, just keep it nice and simple. You know, you probably pick individual parts from the car, don't look, you know, too full on their own, but obviously as a package it works extremely well, and it's been reliable. I mean, the car starts, it's running really nice, and we haven't had any problems with it. So the H-pattern transaxle, it's really nice. So Fitzner Performance Gearboxes, PPG, have done a refresh in there, and for an old box, which they're a dog box, but they can get quite funky with the linkage system and everything that you have. It selects gears beautifully. I've not had a single misshift or anything like that. It's been really nice to drive as far as the trans goes. Yeah, brakes feel great. The steering feels extremely direct. You know, there's no power steering or anything in there. It's just a nice short setup. So, you know, when you turn it, it turns. That's yeah, and the motor's definitely connected to your right foot. If you start squeezing it, it'll give you power, and you just hang on and hope that you sort of hope that you got the line right. So 2-litre turbo, 16 valve. It's not a huge turbo, like I said, and it doesn't make a huge amount of torque, but because of the weight of the car, it still pulls out of the corners really well. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, say that it's going to come out of a corner as, you know, as grunty as, say, a Chev, which a lot of these sports sedans are, but as long as you got it in that rev range and you can get the power down, it's definitely just as quick, if not quicker. Just probably thanks to Simon Fitzner from Fitzner Performance Gearboxes for letting us have a drive and helping support the category as a whole. He's instrumental to historic sports sedans. He owns a lot of them, and you know, he puts on a great show. A huge effort from him to get cars to the track and make sure that, you know, these keep turning wheels, and also to Barry Bray, who's, you know, maintained a connection to the car and making sure that it's, you know, built and run to the way it used to be, and he still loves it, and we're hoping to get him in it this weekend actually. So yeah, thanks to those two guys, and looking forward to a good weekend.